we have on stage in a minute with you Michael Korbacher. He's the Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and also Central Eastern Europe Cloud Director at Google. And this man has 20 years experience in cloud technology, and he has a background from Italy. And his family is Italian as well. His wife is Italian. And he will today tell us why every company needs to use cloud technology right now. So please help me welcome to the stage Michael Korbacher. Big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe it's probably just after lunch. Maybe we start this presentation with a short exercise. Why don't we all close our eyes for 5 seconds, or 10, and think about, and I'll do the same, I trust you do the same, and think about, most of you will remember probably what you've been doing 20 years ago. So if I think about 20 years ago, and some of you might have been thinking about 20 years ago, that was the time when the Soccer World Cup in France was in full swing. So at the end, the French, they won 3-0 against Brazil. At the same time, so me personally, I was moving to the south of France. At that time, Compaq Computers, some of you might remember, actually acquired digital equipment. And I was sent to the south of France, to Sophia Antipolis, to actually help on the integration. That was my first management job, and I can assure you, that was a good experience as a first-time manager. I also, and that's why in the introduction it said that I've been doing cloud for 20 years. That's probably exaggerating to some extent, but the spirit of cloud has been in me for the last 20 years, because as a Compaq employee, I was in charge of building what was called an ASP competence center in the south of France back then. Now, while I was doing that, at the same time, somewhere in the valley, here we go. Somewhere in the valley, there was a team near Palo Alto of young Googlers, Sergey Brin and Larry Page, and they were thinking about a mission that they wanted to accomplish with a company called Google. And that mission was, how can we organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful? Now, that, of course, was the much bigger task out of all of them. The Compaq digital integration was not a piece of cake, but that, of course, was much more impactful on an industry. And it actually set the tone to the company that we are today. So when you look at Google, and you might be looking at Google from the outside, then you might think, oh, that's a company that is doing a hell of a lot of engineering to sell more ads. And actually what it is, when you come inside Google, you will find out it's almost the other way around. We try to sell more ads to actually afford to do more engineering. Thank you. And that is kind of the spirit that helped us to manage to fulfill and complete this mission for the last 20 years of saying we're going to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. This is the team that started this about 20 years ago. And you will see the gentleman with the white shirt in the back with the beard. That's Urs Hölzle. And he's the guy who built the Google infrastructure from the start, starting with Lego blocks. So they were putting servers together based on Lego blocks. And if you think about this mission and where we actually ended up today, so today we worked on this mission, drove constant innovation to actually deliver services to billions. So we have many services that run out of this Google infrastructure that serve billions of people on a regular basis. Think about Gmail, think about search, think about Google Play, YouTube, Maps, all services that rely on a tremendous infrastructure that was built to fulfill this mission. And if you think 20 years back, and you were thinking 20 years back, what was the state of the internet back then? Even that was a giant task to actually say, we're going to download the internet, we're going to index the internet, and then we're going to give access to everybody on the planet to actually access this index, search it, and get results ideally anywhere on the planet within milliseconds. So that was the challenge. And doing that in an environment that was growing as rapidly as the internet did. So one of the challenges that Urs had when he built this infrastructure was he probably couldn't go to Best Buy and just buy a CD of an operating system that would just scale to do the job. There was not necessarily a file system that would allow you to download the internet, nor would there be business analytics or tools that would allow you to index and search the internet and give answers back in milliseconds. Needless to say, relevant answers in milliseconds. So part of this, and that's part of our DNA, what we had to build was this requirement for constant innovation and to do things that have never been done before. So things like to develop the Google file system, to develop concepts like MapReduce and BigQuery that would allow to search through massive amounts of data. If you think about recently some of our later innovations, such as Kubernetes, container-based technologies that allows you to shift workloads between racks, servers, clouds, data centers. All this innovation, including artificial intelligence, and some people might see artificial intelligence and machine learning as some of the crown jewels of cloud technologies, our invention, TensorFlow. Now, what we've done consistently over the last 20 years as the internet progressed and as we were working against fulfilling this mission, we've constantly worked on the infrastructure that is powering Google. So we're operating one of the largest networks on the planet. About 40 to 50% of all internet traffic is actually going across the Google network at this stage. So we've taken the Google infrastructure and the tools that are actually powering Google, and we're making this packaged available to companies in the form of Google Cloud. So as a company, you have the option today to leverage the infrastructure that runs Google, to leverage the tools that power Google, and use them for your own advantage and your own advancement as a company. Now, if we keep looking at how things are evolving and what drives us and what drives our engineer to deliver constant innovation, one of the things, and you will notice this, so search has evolved massively over time. So a lot of the search that's being done today is, of course, done from a smartphone. And to a large percentage, people are doing this not only from a smartphone, but using voice. Now, that's part of the innovation that we're delivering as well. But if everybody did that for 3 minutes on a daily basis, it would probably bring down the computer systems of the planet. So another innovation that we've been driving to actually help there is to look at things like not only GPUs, but the next generation of TPUs, which is a massive step forward in the way how we can accelerate the training of machine learning models as well as machine learning algorithms. And I like this comparison, which actually says TPUs are a step forward in terms of Moore's law of about 7 years compared to classical CPUs. And that's another innovation that is powering Google data centers and that, of course, our cloud customers have access to. So there's some example for some workloads where you have classical graphical processing units that were running for 24 hours, 32 of them, and in a quarter of the time, 1/8 of one TPU was actually doing the same job. Just to give you a comparison. I don't want to block your brains now for the next 10 minutes to actually calculate how many times that's faster. It's a very special scenario as well, so it probably doesn't apply necessarily to all scenarios, but the performance benefit is massive. Now, when we think about cloud, and we think about cloud together with our customers and partners, then we think cloud is not an option anymore today. If you want to be competitive in the market, the decision for cloud has to be done, should have been done, and you should already be doing your first cloud project. The good news is, when I speak to companies today, most of them actually do. But if I look at the overall market, I think only about 5% of workloads are already in the cloud. So we are at the beginning of this evolution. I think your decision to go cloud is not about saving 10% by moving one workload from your own data center to some provider's data center. That is not the sense of urgency that you will feel that will help you to move to the cloud. I think the urgency to move to the cloud is to take advantage of some of the tools, and in our example, of some of the tools and infrastructure that power Google, that you can leverage to your own business advantage. If you're thinking about innovation and what drives you as a company, there's different cycles of innovation, and you can make your IT decisions based on what you can afford. So if we look at typical on-premise data center, private cloud data center scenarios, we often have innovation cycles, and you will know that better than me maybe. We often have innovation cycles of years. How often do you touch systems? How often do you renovate systems? How often do you modernize systems? If you're in a world where you're operating in hybrid clouds, and many companies do that, you're probably innovating in a cycle of months, maybe quarters. So your innovation cycles are faster, you're more flexible with your workloads, so you will be able to innovate faster. If your workloads run in a public cloud, in a large-scale cloud environment, we're probably talking about innovation cycles of months, and I would say to some extent maybe days, because some of your systems will just be innovated on a constant basis. So if we look at a Google Cloud, we probably apply 1,000 innovations a year without producing any downtime on Google Cloud. We don't take systems down, systems just evolve over time. So it's a fluid, ongoing process. So you might be sitting here and you might say, gee, you know, I'm a manufacturer. Any manufacturer in the audience? A few, okay. I'm a retailer. I'm a bank, financial services. Why do I care? Why do I care about this? Yeah. How does that affect me? At the end of the day, it should. So if I look at companies today, I think one of the things that you want as a company, and especially if you're a traditional company, when I think about a bank, for example, you want to be more data-driven. Now, that is not a cliche. You actually want to take advantage of what I think sets you apart in the industry, which is you have experience and you have a lot of data on the experience that you have collected. You're also probably sitting on a lot of enterprise systems in your data center that maybe 10 years ago were your competitive advantage, because all your competitors or startup companies could not afford to enter your business because the barrier to entry was so high, and that was your enterprise system. Today, you might feel that this enterprise system in your data center is your burden. It is keeping you away from innovating at the speed you really would like to stay ahead of competition. And your competition looks completely different today. Your competition could be that startup company that goes to our control panel or a public cloud provider's control panel and spins up a 1,000-node Hadoop cluster in 90 seconds. That's about as long as it takes to spin up a 1,000-node Hadoop cluster. They use it for 10 minutes, and then they shut it down, and it takes 60 seconds to shut it back down, and then it just disappears as it never existed. At the end of the month, they receive an invoice on their credit card statement. It's going to be one line, and it says 12.5 minutes of Google Cloud Platform usage. Yeah? And this is the competition. These are the companies that you're competing with today. And this is where you make your own decision on the 3 cycles of innovation, of private cloud, hybrid cloud, public cloud. What gives me the speed of innovation that I need to stay ahead of this unfair competition? I think all of the companies that I'm dealing with, they have potential to be more collaborative. How do we work better together? How do we optimize? How do we work better with our suppliers? How do I actually integrate some of my suppliers into our processes? And then if you take people aside and you speak to them privately and you talk about, well, so how's security doing? Then maybe you hear one or the other war story of where somebody got burned on the security side. So security might be another argument for people to actually consider moving to the cloud. So that's another sense of urgency. Am I a company that is a market leader, and we've got many of those in Germany, a global market leader with a lot of intellectual property, then I want to make sure that I'm protected. And maybe I want to be protected by a company that has the potential to employ some of the most specialized security experts on the planet that have built this infrastructure that is just not being hacked. At the end of the day, next to all these things, and that's why I'm saying cloud is there for growth, is you as a company, you want to be more agile. You want to be faster. You want to be more reactive to changes on the business. You want to be able to launch new business models very rapidly. Ideally, you want to lead the pack. You want to be proactive. Yeah? You want to be the one that actually sets the trends out there. If any company that I'm speaking to, out of all this, I think the most important thing as a company, that decision that you will have to make is not a question of if you should go to the cloud. It is also not a question of when you should go to the cloud. I think the decision must be now, to start dealing with this technology, to start learning about this technology, and to start using this technology for the benefit of the progression of your company. I appreciate your attention. Thank you very much. Enjoy the show, and hope to see you in the cloud at some point. Thank you.
Michael, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Would you be ready for a few questions?
Absolutely.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Do we have questions from the audience? Now, I'm sure Caro, you're right here. Perfect. She has a mic for you guys, so fire away. Ooh, not much enthusiasm. Well, one there. Thank you, sir.
Very good.
Hello. So you mentioned the fear to leak your data, and how would you say, do you overcome it? Because all the companies I know are more protective, especially here in Germany. So I would rather build my own computer system than to shore it off somewhere else where no German law protects the data. Thanks.
Yeah. I think you should choose. You should choose somebody. So if you're such an expert and you have all the confidence that you can do it better, then maybe that's your way. Yeah. I think many probably won't be able to do it better, but their competition will use potentially something that is better. Yeah. So I think that is the key driver. If you're the exception, then you should maybe do this. I think you should look at whatever cloud provider you choose, there's going to be a legal baseline that is going to describe how do we deal with your data, who owns that data, you own that data, so we're just operating, processing this data, but you're actually the controller of this data. There's a new GDPR that rules how we can deal with data. So I think you should have that level of confidence. You should have a look at, of course, carefully study contractual situations. And then I think it's worthwhile to really look at the security that some of those providers like ourselves can offer. And then you judge yourself. So I'm not saying you can't do what we do. It's often not that likely. Our investments in infrastructure have been around $30 billion in the last 3 years. So you can take advantage of that, or you can make that conscious decision of saying, I feel I can do it better. That's true. Fair enough.
Right here, gentlemen.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Quick question. What is Google's take on helping enterprise customers moving to the cloud by enabling an easy migration, kind of a lift and shift approach as a first step? In my perception, Microsoft tries to leverage on their position in the market to help moving, migrating, more or less lift and shift of leveraging their offerings natively in Azure Cloud. What is Google's position on that?
So I think, so if you look at us as a company, we don't have the luxury of legacy. Which is also a big advantage, I think, because we've been able to innovate in the cloud for the last 20 years without thinking about 20 version backwards compatibility. I think the approach might be different. And I think companies often look at us for our, let's say, spearheading functions of innovation. So when companies come to us, they often look at business analytics, they look at machine learning, some of the things that we're very well known for. And I almost have to remind our salespeople that lift and shift is a very fair scenario as well. But I would say, the approach might be slightly different, that companies come to us and they look at that sense of innovation, that innovation spirit that they get from Google. But then we also look at, when we look at machine learning and artificial intelligence, we also notice it takes data to do that. Now, where's that data and where should that data be kept? So then we are starting maybe a similar dialogue, but from a different angle. Does that make sense? Okay.
Any more questions from the audience? I have one.
Oh, wow. That's going to be a
Please
tough
help me
one.
understand. It might be a tough one. Probably not. Help me understand, please. So you explained to us about the innovation cycles that with the cloud are being, increased, and therefore innovation is more likely or more fast. How does that happen? How do I understand the process behind it without, having to go really deep?
So, I mean, if you look at the systems that we're building, then our systems are not down for maintenance. So you don't come to Google and then on a Saturday you will see a sign, tomorrow between 5 and 6 we're down for maintenance. And I think that is the fundamental base of, well, I would say friction-free innovation. The other thing that is good, or where I feel we have an advantage, is any piece of innovation that we drive, we have the potential to test with potentially hundreds of thousands of trusted testers. So we get a lot of data on the value of an innovation prior to us actually releasing it. But it's an ongoing process. So we have multiple teams that constantly operate and develop on our systems and keep improving our systems. So if you look at our roadmap versus maybe a traditional software company's roadmap, that looks vastly different. It's also somewhat more fluid. It is more agile, and somewhat more fluid, I would say.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for joining us.
Thank you for listening to me.
A big round of applause, please.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.